When we talk about serial killers, almost all cases involve men. However, there are women who have also committed multiple murders for twisted and brutal motifs. Among the most notorious cases of serial killers, we have Aline Wuornos. Born on February 28, 1956, Aline was a sex worker who was convicted of the murder of 7 men between 1989 and 1990. According to Wuornos, who was declared guilty, the crimes had been in self-defense after men had sexually brutalized her and beat her, although she later retracted that confession. Aline was sentenced to death and she received a lethal injection in 2002. Judy Bueniano. Known as the Black Widow, she was executed in an electric chair in 1998. She poisoned her husband with arsenic, drowned her own son who was partially paralyzed. Additionally, she tried to kill a third victim using a bomb. Apparently, the motive was to get money from life insurance. Amelia Dyer. Dyer began by charging money to take in unwanted babies. Once she had the children, she starved them, drugged them, or strangled them. She is believed to have killed hundreds of infants, but she wasn't stopped until one of the corpses appeared in a river. She was hanged in 1896. Kristen Gilbert. Gilbert murdered 4 of her patients. All of them were war veterans when she worked as a nurse. Kristen injected her victims with a drug called epinephrine. Although prosecutors attempted to secure a death penalty, she was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2001. Nanny Doss. Doss was sentenced to life imprisonment in 1955 after confessing to have killed her 4 husbands with arsenic. She had also murdered her mother, her sister, her nephew, and her mother-in-law. She died of leukemia in prison, 1965. Dorothy Fuente. Dorothy was arrested in 1988 for poisoning her tenants to steal their Social Security checks. Remains of 4 women and 3 men were found on her patio. She was sentenced to life imprisonment. She died at age 82 in prison. Myra Hindley. The Moors murders were carried out by Ian Brady and Myra Hindley between July 1963 and October 1965 in and around Manchester, England. The victims were 5 children, aged between 10 and 17, at least 4 of whom were sexually assaulted. The couple buried their victims at the Sandalworth Moor. They both died in prison. Amy Archer Gilligan. Amy ran a nursing home in Connecticut during the 1900s. Eventually, the authorities realized that at least 48 people had died in her care and that many of the patients had named her the beneficiary of their life insurance policies. Gilligan murdered her victims with arsenic, but she was only prosecuted for 1 homicide. She was sentenced to prison in 1917, but was later transferred to a psychiatric hospital. She passed away in 1962 at the age of 89. Rosemary West is an English serial killer who collaborated with her husband, Fred West, in the torture and murder of at least 9 young women between 1973 and 1987. She also murdered her own stepdaughter in 1971. Her and her husband were arrested in 1994. Rosemary was given life imprisonment. She still resides in prison in the UK to this day. Jane Toppin. Jane was a nurse known so much for her bright, cheerful personality that she was nicknamed Jolly Jane. Jane would experiment with drugs such as morphine and atropine, using her patients as guinea pigs. Jane later moved on to poisoning selected victims, including her foster sister. When Jane confessed to 31 killings in 1902, she was declared insane and locked in Taunton State Hospital for the rest of her life. Jane claimed the reason she committed the crimes was because the man she loved rejected her and it left a void in her life that murder filled.